And here's the thing, though, Chad, because I was watching it. Her plan is absolutely hilarious. It took me a second to understand what she was doing in the movie, but she's pretty much doing the exact same thing that Mel Brooks did in Spaceballs. This movie steals. Here's the thing I did not expect. This movie steals so much from the plot of Spaceballs. Hello, and thank you for checking out the video. I just want to let you know that I not only create content on my YouTube channel, Class in the Glass, but I'm also on Twitch, where I review movies, cartoons, and TV shows live, while also playing single-player games and multiplayer games. I also have a Patreon, where subscribers have access to hundreds of video and audio commentaries for films and cartoons, as well as podcasts and videocasts. In the meantime, thank you again for watching, and enjoy the video. We're going to go ahead and we're going to move on to the next part of my show, and that is my review for The Marvels, the infamous Marvels movie, chat. And for those that don't know, the general background, the general plot, the synopsis, if you will, Carol Danvers gets her powers entangled with those of Kamala Khan and Monica Rambeau, forcing them to work together to save the universe against a new and vengeful threat. Now, before getting into my review of the Marvels, the latest chapter in the MCU saga, we're 30 plus films in, I think, at this point. I obviously want to talk about, my experience with the Marvel's characters, chat, and the original Captain Marvel film. Now, I remember when Captain Marvel, specifically Carol Danvers, was originally called like Miss Marvel in the comics. And I was primarily introduced to her via Brian Michael Bendis's New Avengers series, which, there was this whole arc where Avengers disassembled and, Brian Michael Bendis came in and he's like, I'm gonna do my own take on the Avengers, right? And I actually really liked that book for the most part. He also brought in like a lot of the stuff that he had like worked in like other, comic book storylines. Like he was probably best known at that point for like his Daredevil stuff, obviously. And obviously, Ultimate Spider-Man, too. And so, of course, he had Spider-Man join the Avengers. He had Daredevil occasionally team up with the Avengers, which is like, oh, this is so awesome. So someone who was like really into Brian Michael Bendis at that time, having him in that book was amazing. But he was my primary introduction to the Carol Danvers character. And of course, she was a member of that New Avengers roster. And I really liked her character in there. And she had like this really nice rapport with many members of the team, particularly with like Captain America and like Spider-Man, and also like Luke Cage as well, who was also one of the members of the New Avengers. Really, really love that. Now the thing was though, I was not familiar with her when she went through, I guess you would call it like a rebranding, a reimagining, and she became the new Captain Marvel. Like you have like the original Captain Marvel, right? And that character had died, I believe. And, she had gotten her abilities from him, I think, right? But then she wasn't Captain Marvel. She became Miss Marvel. Well, they're like, well, now we're going to call her Captain Marvel. It's like, okay, that's fine. Now, the thing is, though, I never read those books. But apparently, from what I've been told and what I've read online in reviews and things, they made a lot of changes to her, specifically her personality. And she based on what I've read, she became a bit of a harder, stricter, some would even say mean character. And again, I haven't read those books, so I can't say for sure. But what I've read of them. About this new interpretation is that they made a lot of changes to Carol Danvers. Now, outside of that, like those books, I have read the newest Miss Marvel, chat, which was, I guess, created a decade or so ago, introducing us to the character of Kamala Khan, and who took over the mantle, if you will, of Miss Marvel. And I've always loved that character. She's spunky, she's funny. She always seemed to be, like excited to be like a superhero. That like immediately came across in all of her books. And, similar to like Miles Morales, who I think is, one of the better creations of Marvel Comics in quite some time. time new creations, if you will. I was like, yeah, she's great too, and I like what, when she's popped up. I don't think what they're doing with her right now in the comics is all that great. It feels very much like, well, we're doing this because of the movies are doing this with her. I'm like, that's disappointing. Like, they killed her off. They decided to kill her off in the comics, and then like a month later, they brought her back. And oh, lo and behold, her embiggening, her stretching, her growing powers are now different, and she has the powers of her cinematic counterpart. I'm like, yeah. I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to keep everything consistent across your brands and everything. But what I had read about read of the character before then, really liked her. Always really liked Miss Marvel, and was obviously excited to see her eventually debut in the MCU, which of course she has. And also I just really like the fact that, because I think so often in a lot of comics, especially, because I was an avid Spider-Man reader for years, right? And but so many of the writers and certainly the editors, they always want to kind of keep Spider-Man just miserable all the time. That was part of his initial appeal, is this, that, hey, he was this struggling poor kid, this teenage kid, had to do everything by himself. He wasn't a sidekick. He was always by himself, and that was the appeal. But it's been 60 years now, and like Spider-Man's like he's always miserable. He can never maintain a relationship, never hold down a job. He's just this perpetual, just man baby going through the same endless cycle, no matter what writer takes him over. I'm just like, I fucking hate that. And I think a lot of people have been growing to hate that for quite some time. And so it's nice to have a hero who is like literally excited to be a superhero. I think that's very refreshing. And yeah, and the other one, Chad, the Monica Rambeau character of Photon. I never heard of Photon before WandaVision and obviously the Marvels. I was just completely unfamiliar with that character. I guess technically introduced to her in the Captain Marvel movie, but then truly introduced to her this iteration of the character in WandaVision, which I did like her in WandaVision. I liked her quite a bit, but she's been brought in here, but I knew nothing about her from the comics or anything like that. It was only the cinematic stuff that I was introduced to her through. And, the original Captain Marvel movie, which, again, made $1 billion. I think there's a very good reason as to why it was so commercially successful at the time, because it was literally situated in between two of the biggest Marvel movies of all time, Infinity War and Endgame. And the way in which they set up Captain Marvel at the end of Infinity War was just like, oh, shit, this is a must-see movie. And I think that's what led to its huge commercial success. But the movie itself, I was disappointed by it. I really didn't care for it. I felt like the direction was sloppy, and Brie Larson as Captain Marvel, which is something I'm going to be touching on again in this review. I've said this for a long time. I feel like she's miscast. I feel like maybe this is how the character is now in the comics. So when I was reintroduced to her in this way, I was like, this is not like what Miss Marvel originally was like, the Carol Danvers was like. But I guess it is closer to the current version. I don't know, but I just really didn't particularly care for her character. I just thought she was like too stoic. There's nothing about her that like popped or anything, and I think it was a combination of directors that didn't really know what they were doing, kind of uninspired writing, and with both of that, it doesn't matter if you're the most talented actor in the world, which Brie Larson certainly is a very talented actress. She's great, but again, if you're given a shit script and you're given shit direction, give a shit performance, and I feel like that was kind of the case for a character in that movie. And it just kind of felt like very formulaic, very generic, and there was something like, it had some interesting elements, like, oh, we're going to go back and see a younger Nick Fury, and it's going to be kind of a duo movie. And the one thing I liked about the movie was the use of the Skrulls. I thought how they handled the Skrulls, and that was actually quite good. But everything outside of that, I just didn't care for. It all just came across as bland. And ever since then, all of her other appearances since then, she's never really popped to me like so many of these other Marvel characters, like some of these the other Avengers. It's just, she's barely in Endgame. She's effectively like a glorified cameo in the beginning and then at the very, very end. And I was like, but I didn't feel like I missed her or I needed her. It's just like she's just kind of there to be the ultimate power, but she's not given anything particularly interesting to do narratively, in terms of her character. And so I was like, okay. So I guess, again, that brings us to this latest film, the Marvels, and the buzz around this movie, leading up to its release. Let's not beat around the bush here, Chad. It's been terrible. And some would say catastrophic. And, all the rumors and behind the scenes issues and, in my opinion, a director, Nia DaCosta, who I'm not particularly fond of, in terms of her directing. I really disliked her Candyman, and if you want to check out my Candyman review, please do so, because I do go into specifics as to why I feel like she did such a sloppy job, terrible job, with that movie. Coupled with the fact that the film couldn't have a traditional marketing campaign because of the strikes. It all seemingly spelled disaster for this movie. It's like, wow, it's like going into this, I'm like, all right, here we go. Like how it's been set up and how you have people like on one side saying it's going to be the worst thing ever and everything. You're a shill if you like it, or the people on the other side saying you're a misogynist and a sexist if you hate it. And it's like, I'm just like, I'm going to give it a shot. I'm not excited for this movie. I was not excited for it. I thought the marketing that they have been doing has been kind of uninspired. But I was like, I'm gonna give it a shot. I'm at the very least, I'm gonna be fair. I'm gonna be honest about my review. I don't got an agenda for my review. I'm gonna tell you what I think works and what doesn't work. And I will say this: to be positive at the top, Iman Vellani, who plays the character of Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel, is an absolute standout. And she is a joy to watch on screen every time the film focuses on her. It's like the movie gets a shot in the arm, a shot of quality, if you will. She's funny, she's charming, and seems genuinely excited to be there. And I want to see more of her character, obviously, in the future in the MCU, right? Both in the MCU. But also, I also want to see Iman Vellani in more projects, because outside of this stuff, I don't know if I've seen her in anything else. But I really like her quite a bit. And I think she is definitely the absolute star of this movie. If you want to see this movie, she's the reason to go see it. Because outside of her and the role she plays, I feel like this movie is a complete mess for a variety of reasons. It's very obvious but basically midway through, I would say 2/3 of the way through, it's very obvious that the film was a victim of a ton of reshoots and severely edited behind the scenes, and which also, given its short runtime, makes it just all the more obvious. So much of the movie's focus is on the trio of Brie Larson and Teyonah Parris and Iman Vellani. But in my opinion, Vellani is really the only character you're going to feel invested in, because we kind of just go from one scene to the other with barely any rhyme or reason. And there's like a little bit of exposition that connects this to that, and we go to the next scene, and it's either going to be like an action sequence or a funny gag. And I feel like all those are relatively messy. Again, with the exception of Vellani. Now, be a little more positive. While they do inject a little more personality into Larson's Captain Marvel in this movie, into Carol Danvers, mostly because she has to bounce off of a very bubbly Vellani, her character is simply just not working here. Much like it didn't work in the previous film, and her other appearances, her other cameo appearances. There's just nothing about her that's very well defined, especially personality-wise. She's just stoic for the sake of being stoic, and the constant chip on her shoulder mentality is just not working. At this point, the character needs to be either retired from the MCU or just completely reinvented with a new creative team and, honestly, a new actor. I mean, yes, she's a little bit better here, but this is a sequel. This is a sequel to her movie. She's already made other appearances so far, and I really I can't get a vibe from her other than just like, well, whatever. It's just this kind of, what am I even doing? It's just this kind of blasé approach to everything. And I'm just like, if you don't feel motivated and invested, then why should I feel motivated and invested in you? And that's just kind of how she is throughout this film, a lot of this film, and certainly to a much worse degree in her original movie. Paris's Rambeau, on the other hand, or Photon. I don't think they even call her Photon. That's the thing. Like, they marketed her as Photon, but I don't think they. I could be wrong, but I don't think they ever say her name in the movie. Everything goes by so fast. They may have mentioned it, but I don't recall. But Paris's Rambeau, on the other hand, really is only in the film to regurgitate exposition and sci-fi fantasy mumbo jumbo. Don't know what's going on? Well, don't worry. She'll provide an explanation for the characters who don't understand, for the audience who doesn't understand what's going on. That's all she's there for. Like, most of the movie, I would say, is primarily focused on Kamala Khan and Carol Danvers. And when she's in there, it's just like, she could have been like in a third of this movie and then kind of been written out of the rest of it. And I was like, I don't really know what you're hearing. The other thing is, like, I don't understand her powers. Her powers are just kind of weird and ill-defined. Like, it's like she's able to manipulate light, but she absorbs light. But then it's like, light manipulation, sure. But they have her doing some crazy stuff later on in this movie. Like, wait, how is this happening? Like, you got attacked by a witch, and you got light manipulation powers, but now you're closing, like, quantum entanglement portals to other universes. And I'm like, can light do that? I guess so. It's what the movie requires her to do that, so therefore that's what her powers are, which I don't like that kind of thing. I like having, like, hey, well-defined powers. This is your power set, right? And a lot of superhero movies have done that well. Others have not. And this is that case where it's like, we are kind of just writing her to be whatever we need her for any particular scene, whether it be delivering exposition or just, your powers do this now. It's like, why? Because we need to get to point A to point B to point C, E, F, D. That's where we got to go. And so I was like, okay, shit, no, that's my powers too. And so, yeah, I didn't particularly. She's not bad. She's just there. she's just there in the movie. The story and the villain of the movie are as generic as they come. The villain, who is a Kree warlord named, I don't know, I'm gonna call her Deborah. I'm gonna call her Deborah for the sake of convenience, chat. She's pretty much seeking vengeance against Captain Marvel for something she did in the previous film. And here's the thing, though, chat, because I was watching it. Her plan is absolutely hilarious. It took me a second to understand what she was doing in the movie, but she's pretty much doing the exact same thing that Mel Brooks did in Spaceballs. This movie steals. Here's the thing I did not expect. This movie steals so much from the plot of Spaceballs. So here's the setup. Her planet, or whatever the hell it's called, Hellas, I don't know. Her planet is dying, and she's going from world to world to world and literally sucking all the air and all the water and all the sunlight from these different planets. It's so incredibly dumb. And of course, the trio needed to stop her from doing all this sucking while, dealing with a physical issue of their own. Because as she's, sucking all the air and water and sunlight from all these different worlds, it causes this quantum energy portal thing to, like, get on the fritz or something. And that's why you have the gimmick of anytime Captain Marvel or Miss Marvel or Photon use their powers, they start switching places, right? That's the thing. And sometimes they're kind of clever with it. Sometimes, like, at least like a cool little action scene. Very inconsistent, the action scenes in this movie. Some are good. Most are kind of like, whatever. Like, they're fine. They're fine. Now, the problem is they're very inconsistent with it, because sometimes they'll use their powers and they don't switch. I'm like, well, they just used their powers. Why didn't they switch? It's because the movie requires that they don't switch at this time. And I'm just like, okay. Okay, that's fine. We've got an hour, 40 minutes. Like, okay, I'm not going to ask any more questions. Fine. Also, the humor, I would say, is all over the place. Again, the most of it works with Iman Vellani. and her family. You know, they have the family do something pretty goofy later on in the movie, but that all works. Like, again, like, the best part of the Miss Marvel TV series was her, obviously, her friend group and her family and their interactions. Like, the least interesting part was the superhero stuff. I was like, I don't really care about. I don't even know what the hell the villains are in that show. But all that like worked very well, and in much the same way, it's the case here, right? And so the humor of them I actually quite liked. There are these like I would describe them as set piece gags. There are these 2 set piece gags, chat. And for me, they go on for way too long and they just don't work. So, I mean, I don't think this is really a spoiler, but like one of the set piece gags, they're on a world, and it's a world where the only way you can communicate with each other is by singing. Like, you just have to sing songs. Like, that's what it is. That's how you communicate. And it kind of felt like a TV special there. That's what the writing slave. It felt like, we're going to have a musical episode on Scrubs or a musical episode on whatever, sitcom from the 90s, 80s, 70s. Like, that's what they do. And it's like, oh, this is going to be kind of fun and irreverent. And I'm like, yeah, but it goes on for way too long. Like, had that been like maybe like a one-off bit, like this species only communicates in singing, and it's like you do it once and then you like maybe do a callback to it like much deeper in the movie, that would have been funny. But it just keeps going. It goes on. It's like, no, this is not working. Like James Gunn would have went, I'm going to do this little funny gag here, right? It's going to be right here in the movie. Be like, oh, that's funny. And then we're going to call back to it at the very end of the film. And it'll be like, oh, it's even funnier, right? But it's just like, no, we're just going to, because, a joke is funnier if it's longer, and that's what they do there. Also, and this might be a personal thing with me. I really don't like the cats. I just don't like the cats. I don't like the cat, whatever the fuck his name is, Goose, from the original movie. He's here, or they're here. I don't know what the fuck they are. But there's also kitten. There's now, what are they called? Flarkins, or Flarkins, chap. Them Flarkins are back, and there's more of them now. And they do something with them that involves them just voring everything. They vor a lot in this movie. They vor a shit ton of stuff. And I just don't like the way it looks. It looks weird. It looks very weird to me. Also, I forgot, Samuel L. Jackson's in this movie. Man, Chad, Nick Fury's having a rough time. Like, I didn't watch all of Secret Invasion. I watched the first episode. Actually, the first episode was solid. But then I guess I didn't feel motivated to watch the rest of it. And what I've heard definitely didn't motivate me, because they said, like, it's awful. It's one of the worst things the MCU has ever made. And so it's like, okay. And then in this movie, he's just kind of relegated to being, the loud, funny black guy. That's kind of what they have him doing, chat. There's a line in the movie where what's the line? It's, I think he says, he's yelling at Rambeau, and there's a line, he says, black girl magic! I'm like, I don't know what black girl magic is, chat, but apparently that's a thing. Yeah, they just, they set him up, like, why he's working on this project. He's working on Saber to prevent alien threats, and he's also, there's also another plot, like, tertiary plot, the Skrulls, and what they're doing, which kind of, I guess, connects it in a way to Secret Invasion. But, man, they really don't know what to do with him in this film. It kind of just felt like, well, he was in the last one, and he has his connection to Carol Danvers, their friendship, and she was the one that exposed him to all the stuff that would later define his entire life. But yeah, I feel like he didn't need to be there, honestly. I don't feel like he was used all that well, which is exciting, because I like him as Nick Fury quite a bit. I mean, famously, chat. He's it's the Ultimate version. I mean, I think at the time, Mark Miller, he asked if he could use Samuel L. Jackson's likeness, and he said yes. And he's like, and Samuel L. Jackson be like, yeah. So I hope I can play the character later on. And lo and behold, it happened. And usually he's been really good, but again, what they're writing for him in these, at least these 2 properties, just hasn't worked. Certainly this one, which is the only one I've seen. I haven't seen all of Secret Invasion, to be fair. But yeah, very disappointed how they handled Nick Fury in this as well. Just kind of turned him into a jokey character. Which sometimes he's really funny, but here it's just like, yeah, you don't really know what to do with him now. Like, he is so different. Like, if you compare this movie, like, to a film which I think they use Nick Fury extraordinarily well, which is in Winter Soldier. Like, he's excellent in Winter Soldier, Chad. Like, I love it. We got to learn more about him. Funny enough, does he have the line where he says, last time I trusted someone, I lost an eye. And then, of course, it's lame how he lost that eye here, obviously. But you look at how they treated him here, then here it's just like, Jesus Christ, you get whiplash of the quality, in my opinion. And then we get to the, I guess we get to the stingers, honestly, because the movie plays out how you imagine it plays out. Like the good guys win, the villain is defeated, and again, Deborah is done away with, chat, and her Spaceballs plan was stupid. It goes from suck to blow very quickly. There's also just some weird issues that I have, like, they established that the reason why her planet is falling apart is because there was a civil war. But, like, but if there's a civil war, then why does that make the sun stop working? You understand? It's just like, all the oxygen and all the ocean is drying up. And I'm like, okay, because they explain, like, okay, there was this central AI that, like, controlled everything, and that's why the planet's, like, falling apart, and because Carol Danvers got rid of that in the last movie. Like, I get that. But, like, why is the sun dying? Like, how's that connected to, like, the planet? That's very, and they don't explain it. It's like, whatever. Okay, hey, we go from suck to blow. Okay, that's what it is. And then we get at the very end of the movie, Chad, which is the two stingers, which apparently they've been marketing now in the trailers. I guess they've leaked online. And one of, it's funny, I think, like, I actually preferred the one that is not as, I guess, quote unquote, exciting. There's one stinger that focuses on Iman Vellani's Miss Marvel. I was like, oh, okay. Like, okay, that's kind of fun. I feel like you probably should have done a lot of this earlier or something, because a lot of these other, like, what they're kind of tying into has been featured in a lot of the Disney Plus shows. Some of the good ones and some of the bad ones, right? And it's like, all right, that's whatever. The last one. They lead up to it. They put in some dialogue, and it's like, basically the whole thing is one character is in another dimension now, right? And they meet some other characters from that dimension is all I'll say. And it just didn't, even though I like those characters in that other universe, in that dimension, the way in which they are going to be featuring them, at least how they featured them here, didn't make me exactly excited. And it's like, okay, I guess so. I would like this to be handled, I think, a little bit better, but in this movie, it just kind of felt like, all right, this is going to be exciting, right? I'm like, I don't know. It doesn't really make me excited. I feel like that's going to be handled better in another upcoming Marvel movie in 2024 than is, like, here. But, yeah, I thought that was a pretty disappointing stinger. It would have been, that type of stinger would have been extraordinarily exciting if that was, like, at the end of Avengers Endgame. That would have been like, whoa, that would have been huge. That would have been amazing. But here, after watching already, which I personally feel is a pretty disappointing movie for the most part, and to kind of end with that, be like, it's like, this was shit, but this is good, right? And I'm like, I guess. So, we'll see. It's overall, Chad, it's just, you can tell this movie had a lot of issues behind the scenes, and, whatever they tried to salvage, whatever they tried to cobble together, it's barely passable. Is it the worst Marvel movie? Is it the worst MCU movie? I don't think so. There's other things that I dislike more. Like Eternals to me is still the stinkiest of all of those movies. And Eternals is also like 2 hours and 45 minutes. I'm just like, the one thing I appreciate, at least in the Marvels, is it is short. It is short. It's an hour 40. Boom, getting you out of there. Thank you for your money and goodbye. The Eternals is just like, it does nothing. It does absolutely nothing. It has an even worse villain, I would say. I mean, this villain's bad. But that movie is just truly, truly awful all the way through. This one at least has moments. This one has characters that at least stand out. And like, I want to see more of Miss Marvel. I want to see more of Iman Vellani, right? It has that for it. But, overall, as a standalone film, as a sequel to Captain Marvel, it's very disappointing. And, I would not be shocked then with this movie probably underperforming. Which I think is underperforming right now. This is going to be the last time we see Captain Marvel. I don't know if they're going to bring her back again. Why would you at this point? Because I don't think Brie Larson, again, there's rumors that she doesn't want to do this anymore, I don't know about that, but at this point, it's like, there's nothing for this character to do now. She has no rapport of any of the other Avengers. There's kind of friendship. It's just like, why even bother? I don't get it. So yeah, I just don't particularly care for this take on this character or these films, with the exception again of Iman Vellani as Miss Marvel. I think she's great, and I want to see more of her. But yeah, it's a pretty disappointing entry in the MCU. Not a great way to end 2023 for this long-running film series. But that's how I feel about it, chat. That's how I feel about this movie. There are some people that are enjoying it, that are actually liking it, that do appreciate its shorter running time. They like the rapport between the three actresses. And I mean, I think everyone across the board, like even the film's biggest detractors are saying Iman Vellani is great. Like I haven't heard a single review, I haven't read a single review or listened to a single review or saw a single review where they say like she was bad. Like everyone across the board saying that she's very good, and she is very good. But the rest of the movie itself, it's generic as they come. Generic as formulaic as they come, and just kind of features some like really dumb plot points and twists, in my honest opinion. But that's how I feel. That's how I feel about the Marvel show. What about you guys? For those of you who have seen it, what did you think? Did you like it? Did you dislike it? Those who have not, you still want to go and see it? You know, I don't think this movie's going to do particularly well commercially. I think it might lose money. We'll find out. Let me know. I hope everyone enjoyed the video, and I want to take the time to tell you about my Patreon, Class in the Glass, which offers hundreds of film commentaries and video reactions to numerous movies, TV shows, and cartoons. If you're a fan of shows like Batman the Animated Series and Avatar The Last Airbender, or films like Aliens and Raiders of the Lost Ark, my Patreon is the platform for you. Currently, I'm doing a subathon to reach 75 subs on the platform. If we hit 75 subs, we'll be able to start voting on the next edited YouTube reaction, which will include actual clips and scenes from the movies and shows I comment over. Choose from such films as Fire and Ice, Masters of the Universe, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers the movie, Mortal Kombat Annihilation, or Spawn. Subscribing at any tier level is appreciated, and feel free to give feedback at any time. Thank you again for watching the video, and see you next time.